Right, we still have our final session, the Spirit of Grain, with some tasting as well. We're going to hear from Andrew Parry, Australian Superintendent's Company, and then Rob Turner, Managing Director and self-confessed spirit geek, I understand, of Animus Distillery. And we're going to be trying some beiju, some shoju, and some gin. So if the Crown staff could please distribute some of the grain-based beiju and shoju to the guests. Andrew, if you can come up and please join us, and I know you've got to say a few words. Andrew is CEO of Australian Superintendent's Company. ASC is a family-owned independent inspection business founded in 1964 and is dedicated to the Australian grain and oilseed export industry. Andrew's going to give his views on the quality of Australian grain for beiju, shoju, and similar products. I would just say, while you taste, if you're driving, be careful. If you're not driving, be careful. And Andrew, off you go.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks. And also a quick thank you to Pat, Rosemary, Brian, and the rest of the team at AGIC to make this conference happen again. Really appreciate your work. And I am very aware of my dangerous position between the grain industry and a free bar, so I'm going to make this quick. Look, I was asked to talk about quality, and as we all know, quality means something different to every person and every organisation. To a trader, it may be a win-win negotiation or a really, really long lunch. To a distiller, it's good quality ingredients. Good ingredients, most of which can be found in really good Australian grain that can be sourced and segregated to meet your needs. To a connoisseur, it may be a top-shelf whiskey, soju, gin, or beiju like we have here today. And by the way, this beiju, otherwise known as sorghum wine, was gifted to me by some friends and colleagues when I visited China earlier this year. And this is really good stuff. This is the best of the best, I've been told. But I will be honest, it's an acquired taste. When I was there, actually, they taught me the two ways to drink beiju. You can either say "Gumbai" and sip, or you can say "Gumbai" and down in one. Now, to the team at ASC, we independently certify the weight and quality of export shipments. But quality to us means building a long-lasting relationship. This is based on communication and trust to accurately certify your exports as quickly as possible. So for the team in our lab, this means getting the correct result every time with the fastest turnarounds possible. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, but when we dig a little deeper, we see there are a number of factors that we have to consider. For example, almost every quality test can be performed using different methods. GTA, GAFTA, EBC, ISO, they're all different governing bodies that write and list the methods we're allowed to use. Different methods with different definitions based on different scientific principles can and do affect the results. Protein, for example, is one of the most important quality attributes used to trade grain. For almost every product, from wheat to whiskey, bread to beiju even, protein content matters. And protein, as you may know, protein's a calculation based on the nitrogen in the grain. You may be familiar with N by 5.7 for wheat and N by 6.25 for barley, where the N stands for nitrogen. You may not be aware that there are two official reference methods used to unlock and quantify the nitrogen in the grain. There's Dumas by combustion and Keldale by digestion and titration. These are two very, very different processes based on completely different scientific principles used to release the nitrogen. And not surprisingly, they give slightly different results, maybe only 0.1, less than 0.2% on the same sample. But in recent years, where pressure has been put on the supply chain, we've seen fewer shipments significantly over-deliver on protein, and some are actually getting closer to the contracted specs. So when you've got a cargo of APW that's going on the line at 10.5%, then suddenly the method you use can be important. But the fact does remain that Australian grain is excellent quality, and the vast majority of shipments we see sourced through reputable traders and suppliers easily meets the contractual specs. Now, in recent years, food safety and chemical residue testing is another area of growing awareness around the world. It has a direct connection to quality that everyone can understand. No consumer is going to want grain or products made from grain that has high levels of chemical residues or toxins in them. So at ASC, we've invested significantly in this space to improve our capabilities. These days, more and more regulations and contracts demand lower and lower maximum residue limits, or MRLs. These can often be in the order of parts per million and much, much lower. So to give you an example of the scale that we're dealing with, let's take one bottle of whiskey, sort of like what we have here today, and if we then take a few more of those bottles and put them end to end around the world, to go 40,000 kilometres, we would need 100 million bottles. Now, 0.01 ppm is a common level that we have to certify for chemical residues, and this is just one of these bottles. It doesn't stop there. 1 part per billion is what we need to test for other more toxic substances like mycotoxins, and 1 ppb is about 6 or 7 of the test tubes that you've got in your hand there, taken from this string of bottles around the world. Then imagine pouring out those test tubes and the residue you've got left is 1 part per trillion, which is what we're testing and certifying for really nasty chemicals and toxins like dioxins and PCBs. So as you can see, we're dealing with incredibly low limits. But the good news is that the vast majority of Australian grain that we've tested and certified is well within the strict Australian limits. Australian grain is still very clean and well below levels of concern. However, we do still need to proceed with caution because the risks don't end at our shore. For almost every country around the world has a different set of MRLs which are based on risk assessments and different consumption patterns in those countries. So farmers and grain handlers need to keep doing their excellent work and aim for GTA best practice guidelines, which includes aiming for half the application label rates for residues to keep those residues down and avoid problems at destinations. Anyway, to finish up, quality is a moving target that needs to be carefully considered and clearly defined every time to make sure you get it right for you and your customer. And in conclusion, can I just see who's got a test tube?
Thank you very much.
One we've got. Can I just say, come by?
Oh, lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Do you just want to stay up here for a bit?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just take a seat. Now, to wash that down, we have some whiskey in the corner as well. Okay, you can help yourself. We also have gin, and this is going to bring us on to our next speaker, Rob. But just before then, I just got a quick question for Andrew, unless anyone else does, in terms of the testing and the quality issues you're talking about. What are the most challenging end markets when it comes to quality and the testing that's required to be done and the residues and so on and so forth? Because you mentioned it varies on market to market.
For end markets, we see...
Can I have a microphone, please? Sorry, just coming. We're coming. Yeah, stand up there, yeah. Okay.
So certainly for chemical residues and toxin testing, we see Europe and Japan being very, very advanced and demanding an incredibly high level of analysis and certification. So they would certainly be the more complex markets that we face on a regular basis.
But you manage your way through them?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Unless there are any other questions on the quality side? Okay, let's move on to our next speaker. Rob Turner, Managing Director from Animus Distillery. Rob is the MD and the co-founder of Animus Distillery, established in 2015 and born from a passion for world-class Australian craft spirits, shared by 4 long-term friends who created the business we now know as Animus Distillery. Rob, you can talk about the distillery and the business you're in. The stall is over there with gin for those who want to try the gin, but why don't you fire us all up, okay?
Thank you very much. Hi everybody, conscious that this is the very end speech here, I'll be very, very fast for you. A few things that I want to just talk through. So A couple of pictures. Who are we? So the group of four here on the top right, that's our four founders. Myself, there on the left, Dr. Joel Wilson, Dr. Aaron Robinson, and Mr. Luke Jacques, the four spirit geeks, the original guys. In 2017, we're very proud to start expanding our team. We're a very new business. We've been going for 5 years, really. We opened up a bar and hospitality/distillery space in Kyneton in Victoria. A couple of stats here, or a timeline of events. 2013, the two doctors took a little trip around Tasmania, where at that time some of the really great Australian distilleries were starting to be known. Things like Lark, Nant and Sullivan's Cove, who've gone on to win international awards. These guys came back inspired by the quality and standard of great Australian spirits that they were seeing, and with their medical and scientific backgrounds thought, we can start doing this. So they literally did. They bought a 5-litre still and started tinkering in their garage. As a group of four friends, we were always constantly together and spending a lot of time in their basement, tinkering with them. And as time grew on, we all started to develop this great passion for these products. We were really inspired by the quality, originally, of great Australian craft beer, and I've heard some people talk about that as well. And it's quite often that we would go to a bottle shop to buy something for the preceding event, and we would always try something new from each different provider. And I think it's a testament to the industry, which I'm now part of, the spirits industry. The Australian beer industry is where that movement started. And I think it's really important to understand that route there. We opened up this business, we started formally in 2015. We opened up a cocktail lounge, and I'm very proud to say that in 2018, one of the gins you can taste here today took out the Australian Small Batch Distillers Awards for the Australian Distilled Spirits Award, and also won a gold medal at the American Distilling Institute. And that's our Arboretum gin. I'll talk with you about that. So for those that are familiar with the area, this is the location. We're an hour out of Melbourne. You can catch a train or take a little scenic road trip. But let me talk about the products. So we take the very best of neutral ethanol produced here in Australia from Australian grain, and we apply very delicately the different flavoured botanicals which we use. So there's 4 gins shown there. From the left to right, we have our Macedon Dry Gin, which is our homage to a typical London dry style gin. You're going to get lots of lemon and lime, big juniper flavours, Christmas spice in the middle, finishing with pepper. Very, very intense. This is my personal favourite. The Ambrosian Gin is inspired by a love of Southeast Asian cuisine. So taking the great Australian neutral-based alcohol that we've acquired and applying things like ginger and galangal and kaffir lime leaf and white sesame seed. The award-winning Arboretum Gin uses quite uniquely red capsicum is the main ingredient, along with native Australian bush tomato and strawberry gum leaves, which we're growing ourselves. So some of these botanicals are literally taken from our greenhouse and distilled within half an hour of becoming off the plant. In fact, I did that this morning before I came here. If you look closely, I've got turmeric all over me. We use the freshest possible ingredients wherever we can, and that means the process we undertake is super labour intensive. We peel all of the citrus, we then remove the pith from those fruits, and we then use the flesh as well. That takes hours of preparation for one basket to produce these gins. And we feel that that's the best representation that we can possibly create using a very unique setup. So rather than placing a lot of these botanicals inside the boiler and macerating the product and boiling the ingredients, we suspend all of those botanicals above it, and it's 100% vapor pressed. That means we're capturing the lightest possible flavours and the most delicate flavours that are very unique to our gins. The fourth one that's there on the right is our Davidsonia gin. This will be available in September, so I'm sorry it's not available for tasting today. It is our Macedon Dry Gin that has been steeping native Australian plums for 18 months. So this has taken an incredible amount of time for us to produce, and we think it's finally ready. So without further ado, that's us. I would love to continue the conversations, but please, by all means, jump up, grab a few drinks around the room. A couple of stats. Here's our business. We're going great. I just wanted to show some stats there. If we look at that, it's, in each quarter, we've just things are expanding, and I think that's testament to the Australian, the industry, the craft Australian industry, spirits, beers, the whole lot. There is this massive renaissance with the craft Australia, and I think that it's a very important thing. I want to say thank you, and for everyone here who's producing, or part of, obviously all of you, producing great world-class Australian grain, thank you, keep doing it, because without you, the Australian craft spirits industry can't make our product. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Rob. Rob, we just want to stay up here for a moment. Just got for everyone's information, 3 of the 4 are available over there for tasting. So after that sales pitch, please do try them. Okay.
Absolutely.
Just on that side, the whiskey, it's from Western Australia and Tasmania. Okay, so it's local whiskey. Please do try that as well. In terms of questions, I think the best thing to do is for people to have a taste and then ask some questions after you've tasted it. I'm sure there'll be a few arising. Sure. From my side, in terms of your market, presumably it's very local at the moment?
Yes, yes. Local is a big part of our market. We distribute nationally, though we are looking to expand and export our products to both Europe and Asia predominantly, is what we see as the next evolution of our business in 2019, I think.
And I think when we were discussing earlier, I asked you the question, what's the difference between your gin and various well-known brands, which I can't repeat here, and you gave me an answer, and would just share it with everyone else, which sets you apart in terms of the gin that you're producing.
Thank you. One of the key things that sets us apart is that process I spoke about with the vapor pressed aspect. But everything we do is handcrafted, handmade. I literally am peeling lemons and oranges and all of these citruses and very carefully ensuring that the quality of the products going in are delicately cared for throughout that entire journey. How we acquire them, we partner with local providers. We get the most organic and best sourced ingredients that we possibly can. And the way we use those ingredients then is how the excellent product, if I call it excellent, I shouldn't say that, it's a bit arrogant, isn't it? But the way that we craft those, the gins out of these botanicals which we've cared for, some of which we're growing ourselves, is I think what sets us apart. We don't just throw it in haphazard. If I think of great big distillers, we're talking tons of citruses that are just tipped upside down. Now, we don't throw them around like that. We care for them a little bit differently.
Thanks very much, Rob. Has anyone got any questions from the floor?